Hello, all. I'd like to welcome everybody to the live stream. Please forgive my voice, I'm losing it. But shout out to everybody in the crowd. Thank you for RJ Bond for coming on. I'm going to start out just
Hey,
do some
hey.
basic shout outs. What's up, Austin, Nicholas, Machiavelli Raider, Mohammed Shakur, Jeff Keon, Tupac Fan, Strap Mine, Mike Fammy, and Corey Wilson. What is up, everybody? Special shout out to Xander, my daughter's Destiny's friend, who is watching a new sub. We appreciate you. RJ, how you doing today, boss?
What's up, Jesse? Good to see you, my friend. Excuse me, my voice is a little bit cracked up anyway. So check it out, Tupac Shakur. Love that name. That's actually from Atra's movie. It introduced him as Tupac Shakur. Jeff Keon, welcome to the show. Prentice Nolan, an old pud flailer. Boy, there's a name for you. KDF Skywalker. What's up, DJ Gary? In the house, Mindstrap. Again, here, number one, guys, if you've never been on the show before and you want to chime in and you got a comment, let us know first time, okay? First time, so we'll give you a good shout out on the show, all right? So just let us know that you're on board. Yeah, I got vain and I had to get rid of some gray hair. So yes, RJ looking young again. What can I say? It's all part of the game, right? So like Robert Downey Jr. don't have a toupee, right? Please. So anyway, what's good, Jesse? What's going on, brother?
Well, there's been a lot to talk about here lately. We've seen Reggie Rock crawl out from under his hole and try to debunk Mia's fake news, and we have the A&E documentary. I guess first and foremost, how do you feel about Reggie Wright and the things that he had to say? Everybody's dying to hear your side of this.
Well, let's see. I'm going to watch the comments here for a minute and see if everybody's really, or if they're really wondering, or if they're going to keep on their own thing. I'm just kidding. All right, so I had a chance to take a look at Reggie's little video, his little outing video that he was outed back to the public again. Um, well, what can you say about a guy that has been talking bullshit for 10 years? I mean, I've got an interview back from a website in 2007 that he said he was going to sue me and he was going to sue Nextel. He was going to sue all these people, and again, this just strikes me as another situation where clearly they didn't know that the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. They didn't know, Reggie Jr. didn't know, nor did the idiot that interviewed him know that all the information about the throat cancer and everything came from his own father. So, I think it's safe to say that there's a few people that have been in contact with us that are related to Reggie Wright's case, and they have a genuine interest in whether or not Reggie Wright was in fact really sick, or whether or not it was, true or not true, and if we had any more information about that. Because you got to remember something, Mr. Wright, you have 20 co-defendants, 20 other people in the same spot as you. Now, if you're going to go around and have your dad's attorney tell everybody that you're sick and that you may have throat cancer, and we put it out there that you may have throat cancer, the person you need to be talking to is your daddy. And you need to be talking more about what he's telling the court so that he get a chance to visit with you and whether or not you're really sick. Because if you're out there running around making videos and saying you're not really sick, then your attorney and your dad's attorney and the judge and the 18 other co-defendants that you have, some of which are sitting in jail right now, can't get them kind of breaks. And every time everybody was arrested, they stayed in jail while you walked free. And you want to run around saying that you're okay? Well, I have a feeling that little video right there may cause you some aggravation later. Not from me, but from other people that took notice of the fact that you said you were sick and your dad said you were sick, and now you run around trying to tell everybody you're not sick. So that's what I have to say about that.
I think
The
it's a
second
pretty
thing,
bold. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think it's a pretty bold claim to come out and say, "Nah, it was a minor procedure."
hey, C. Austin, welcome to the show. Mindstrap, welcome to the show. Cat Eyes Philly, welcome to the show. Mindstrap, boy, back and forth. Nicholas Golden, Daphne, welcome to the show. Love to have you guys chiming in. Thank you. And again, call your friends, get your friends to get on the show. We got some good information, and we got an exclusive coming up. Again, no expense spared. We have another exclusive that this time we have some documents that we're going to put out, and I think it's going to shake a lot of people up. It's going to run this A&E show, so call your friends and tell them, hey, we got some new stuff coming out, so you better tune in. As far as Reggie's talking about me and you, Jess, and living in an apartment, I mean, you know, he's as credible as Tanique is on that, okay? You know, they've got me. Greg Kading said I was a waiter at a cheesecake factory. Reggie said I lived in an apartment, and you and I both lived in an apartment. Tanique said that we met each other in Texas. A whole lot of other things. Hang on a quick second. Hold on. Hang on.
Well, while RJ's out, JM Kazi, we are definitely going to be talking about Bobby Ladd in this.
Sorry about that. Got the chitlins coming home, so didn't want to have special guests on the show.
But shout out to you and thank you for your contribution.
Yeah. So anyway, so here's the bottom line. None of it's true. It's a bunch of bullshit like usual. I think that they like to tell themselves that I've got some reason they can't sue me. I mean, you know, it's no secret and everybody knows that I had to file litigation against Frank Alexander's company to get the rights to my movie back. You know, sometimes you just got to litigate it, regardless of whether or not you think there's a dime worth of money in it or not. Sometimes you just got to litigate it. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, this is just another one. You know, you got Tim Brennan, Bobby Ladd, Reggie Wright. You got all these people running around talking about what they couldn't do because they couldn't pull the trigger. They couldn't get it done. You know, I've been hearing Reggie go sue me for 10 years. So, you know, I take it with a grain of salt. And he can run around and tell everybody that I'm judgment proof. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, everybody's judgment proof, because if you get a judgment against somebody, they can always go file bankruptcy on your judgment. Okay, that's just natural. But it ruins your credit and does a lot of other things. I can tell you, Reggie, that I've never been evicted from any place I've ever lived. Who has? You have. Okay? I've never had to be a deed of default, notice of default to foreclose on my house. You know who has? You do. You're the one with the default notice on your house. Yeah, I'm not selling my house right now to pay for my legal expenses or to keep it away from getting taken by the U.S. government. Guess who it is? Oh, wow. Got all impassioned about that.
Reggie Wright Jr.
Okay. Bottom line. So as far as I'm concerned, a bunch of people making excuses for why they can't do the things that they should be doing. You know, so that I mean, that's all the time I really want to give. I mean, I could get into the whole thing that, you know, Reggie, how did Reggie get his $1 million house, and how did he afford that, and how did he cheat the bankruptcy court by putting all this stuff into his girlfriend's name so that nobody could come after him, and all the depositions that he's done where he said the only income he ever had was his retirement income from the Compton Police Department, a medical pension. I think he wrecked a car or something, so that got him out on a medical leave. Most cops take a desk job. I mean, you know, and by the way, so let's compare those two for a minute, Jesse. Now I'm thinking about it. You heard the story about Brian Watt. He was the Long Beach cop that got shot in the head by a gun that came out of the Compton police evidence locker. Okay, this motherfucker was a cop with a helmet on, and he got shot point blank in the head. Okay, and he went back to the department on the job at a desk job, which he still works at to this day. Then you have, I mean, guy got shot in the head and still want to be a cop. Reggie hurts his ankle in a car accident because he couldn't drive, I guess, while he was on the police department. And he hurts his ankle, and then he retires with a medical pension. Okay? That's some chicken shit business right there, if you ask me, because you got Brian Watts, a real cop, gets shot in the head, still goes back to being a cop. That's a man. You get somebody who gets his ankle busted up in a car accident, and instead of taking a desk job and being a cop, he takes a medical pension. Now, think about this, because you got a medical pension. Then he goes on to start running Death Row Records. I didn't see him limping around. You see him limping around on that bad ankle?
I wonder how come the city of Compton, around, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true too. All right. So you know what? I mean, that's just all we need to say. Reggie's just digging himself into more and more of a hole every time he does an interview. So, you know, that's really all I want to say about that. I mean, he's wrong in everything he says. That's nothing unusual. Doesn't get his facts right. That's nothing unusual. And, he's got an outlet through this bombfirst.com, and that's appropriately named because everything that they do just bombs. It's not successful by any stretch of the imagination. So, bomb first, ask questions later, and this shit's a bomb anyway. So, let's see. So what do we got going here? We're talking about the A&E show. Is that where we're on the thread? Everybody's talking about it?
To steal a line from you, I like my cops to be heroes.
Me too. I like my cops to solve crimes. I mean, I like my cops to talk about where's the gun. Tim Brennan talk about, I found a gun and a ballistics match the Tupac murder, and then the gun disappears into thin air. Wow, that's some crazy shit right there. But let's talk about the death row takeover theory, or as I call it, the Michael Carlin show. That was on last night. I'd like to know, feedback. People, tell us what you thought about the show last night. What's the feedback you're getting, Jesse? What are people thinking there?
I did a response video last night, and it was overwhelmingly negative towards A&E. I think that people are starting to see which way A&E are starting to go. It's the whole series now is just let's rush through this, and like I said, season 2 with episode 2 with Bobby Ladd and Tim Brennan, that was foreshadowing, and I think we already know which way this is going to go. Actually, you pretty much do know which way this is going to go, correct, RJ?
Oh, I predicted this in show 1. I said that the woman who's a host on the show wrote a book with Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd. Afro lady, big orange Afro lady. She's the one who wrote a book with Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd saying Orlando Anderson did it. And they talked about the ballistic support and everything in that. So how many different theories do you think they're going to say are better than the Orlando Anderson theory when you got the woman who wrote the book about it sitting right there in a big afro talking to people? I mean, it's not going to happen. I do like J.M. Kazi's. I do like his theory that Tim Brennan for the last A&E show is going to pull the gun out of Bobby Ladd's ass. That's funny. Okay, that's some shit right there.
Well, and to answer Franco de God, RJ and Jmix, why do you think they didn't use a behavioral specialist? Because to answer that question, because what I've been told, the last couple episodes, the production's been a mess, and they were just rushing. They were just being careless and rushing to put out segments because the show is in internal turmoil, by my sources.
Yeah, they sent her the Orlando Anderson video ahead of time, but basically told her what they were looking for out of it. Because again, you've got to sculpt a narrative. You've got to start the show by saying Orlando Anderson did it. Then you've got to knock all the other theories out, because by the end of the show, you got to go back around again to what your co-host theory is, and that's that Orlando Anderson did it. So whatever you got to do to put everybody else down, and I'll give Michael his due. I mean, they did a fair job of letting him say his piece. They called it Michael Carlin's theory. Fuck Tupac Battle for Compton, fuck RJ Bond and his contributions to any of it, but that's okay. I'll give Michael this one. He couldn't control what they say, and but at the end of the day, they trot out 8 different people who had something negative to say about David Kenner, and then Ben Crump turns around and says, "Well, we can eliminate David Kenner as a suspect." Wow, that was the U-turn of a lifetime there. So
they even got Harry O on the line.
Yeah, well, the problem with Harry O, and I actually know Harry O's handlers, and Harry O's handlers and Harry O is very upset. In fact, they haven't told him yet that they only used maybe 5 sound bites out of a 2.5-hour interview that they did with him at the prison. I'd love to have that tape. Harry O, 2.5 hours with Harry O talking about Death Row Records and Kenner and Suge Knight. 2.5 hours of that. I would love to have that tape. But they did him the same way they've done everybody else. They did long interviews with people. I know that there are other people that were interviewed for the show that are very angry about how they picked and choose what they wanted to put out there, and it wasn't flattering or favorable to anybody. Just again, it's all everybody who was involved with the show says it's just a real shit show, and put it out there. Talking about Sherita for a minute. Oh, hello, wow, Sherita on the show.
Like she was lying.
She wasn't sitting on her couch with her head in her phone or sitting behind the wheel of her car screaming at TMZ. This was a little more posed of an interview and everything. But here's a hint. If you want to pretend that you're innocent with something, don't talk about how you could have killed somebody if you wanted to. Because what that tells everybody is that you could kill somebody if you want to. All they have to do is figure out whether or not you want to. That's it. Pretty stupid argument, especially when you realize that most people, when they're confronted, if I said to you, hey, Jesse, I think you killed somebody, what's your response going to be?
Righteous indignation. I'm going to be like, what are you talking about? Absolutely not. You're full of shit.
Yeah, right. Fuck you. You know, I didn't kill anybody. That's it. I mean, you know, Orlando Anderson, they asked him, did you kill him? No, I didn't kill him. I liked him. All right. They asked Sherita Knight, did you have anything to do with killing Suge Knight? She goes, well, if I wanted to kill him, I'd have killed him myself. I'd have had my family bury him. Okay. I'd have had my family and my relatives help bury him. That was the part that was cut from the show, was her saying that.
Well, one thing that I did notice is, you know, if you're going to be asked directly who you thought killed Orlando Anderson, and I mean killed Tupac Shakur, and you say Orlando Anderson, why would you say it with a laugh like that? I mean, if she
Right,
thought she did good job on damage control, she's absolutely wrong.
Well, I can tell you this much about her so-called damage control. You know, the first thing that she doesn't understand, and what the public doesn't understand, and she hopes never gets out, is she wants to talk about what a great relationship she had with the artists. There was one or two artists that she might have had a good relationship with, but you need to understand Snoop Dogg had to take her in to get her fired as an agent because he didn't want her as his manager and agent, and he took it to the California Department of Employment and took it all the way to the Employment Development Department and had basically like a court hearing to have her position as manager taken away under his allegations that she ripped him off. So yeah, that Sherita talked about what a great relationship she had with the artists. Okay, yeah, which ones weren't after you for ripping them off? Because certainly Snoop was after you for ripping him off and said that you hadn't paid him all kinds of money, Sherita. So let's dispense with the bullshit for a minute and let's get down to the facts. The other thing that was left on the cutting room floor at A&E was the notion when she talked about cops and how silly that was. Well, you know, everybody seems to forget that Sherita's boyfriend was Kevin Gaines. Kevin Gaines was an LAPD cop. You know, so she could talk all day long about that. In fact, Russ Poole told me that when he had Kevin Gaines, the car that Kevin Gaines was killed in was actually Sherita's car. When Kevin was killed, Kevin Gaines, he was shot in her car. She owned it. And apparently a couple days after he was shot, Russ Poole had taken the car in to go get it swept for like traces of drugs or cocaine or anything like that that would have been evidence. And they had the car entirely tore down in the LAPD garage. Well, apparently Derwin Henderson, who was a friend of Kevin Gaines, called up and started demanding that they put the car back together again and that they release it from impound back to Sherita Knight because she was too impatient. I guess when your boyfriend gets killed, the next day all you're thinking about is getting your car back, you know, with the bullet holes and everything else in it. So, yeah, you can see how much caring is going on there. But she was raising all kinds of ruckus with that, and Russ Poole was pissed off because he didn't want the car he wanted to keep it impounded because he wanted to get more evidence. There was already evidence of cocaine in the car that belonged to Sherita Knight. There was already trace elements of that, and he wanted to follow up on that more. So, you know, a lot of going on there, a lot of bad information. You know, FYI, a good defense to did you have anything to do with the murder of Tupac Shakur is no. Not if I wanted to kill him or kill Suge Knight, I'd have killed him myself, or I'd have served him a hot tamale with battery acid in it, or I would have done something. I'm in all kinds of trouble with my microphone today.
Or her comment.
That's not the way.
Or her comment that if I wanted to take half of it, I could have. Then why didn't you? That is the most unbelievable thing in the world to me.
Well, let's walk that back for a minute. She says, I already had half of everything. Well, technically, unless there was some proof that you didn't earn it or proof that you didn't have anything to do with it, most of that money's in a business. I'm not sure that Sherita was actually in on the paperwork for the business itself. She would be entitled to, and let's be real legal about this, she would be entitled to half of Suge Knight's interest in Death Row Records. Not half of Death Row Records. She didn't own half of Death Row Records. Sorry, Sherita, you're wrong again. Here we go. you had at best half of Suge Knight's interest in Death Row Records, which, by the way, he had already split with David Kenner half and half. So you didn't own half of fuck. You own 25% at best of Death Row Records, not 50%. And so 25%, that's not a controlling interest. 51% is a controlling interest, okay? And so you got to look at that and say, you know what, that's just dumb, okay? You make that statement, all right, I own half of Death Row Records. No, you didn't, okay? But, again, that's what the problem is. These people just throw this stuff out to the public. They just throw all this bullshit out. And they don't expect anybody to fact check a single thing. They don't expect anybody to actually learn from themselves or do anything to go find out, because if you found out that's how Death Row Records was set up, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out, so.
Well, I tell you what, Rolex Enterprise, welcome to the show. He's a big critic of ours. And for those that don't know, RJ, how do you know what was cut from the show? How do you know all this inside baseball?
Oh gosh, well, okay. Well, let's start with the fact that I was contacted by the producers of the A&E show almost a year and a half ago to help them and provide them with documents and help them with video, the footage of Frank Alexander and Michael Moore. Where the hell do you think they got that from, dudes? Okay, the only person on the planet that's got that is me, and they had to get it from me. I met with the producers many times. We had many discussions on the show. I went to dinner with Ben Crump himself. We went out. I've been watching this show constantly, waiting for it. And, it was supposed to have come out over a year ago. So, the show's been delayed. I've been to the production offices. I've sat there and had long meetings with the producers and directors of the show, and they asked my opinion about things. So, in all honesty, yeah, I know more about this show than anybody would expect, only because I was involved. And in fact, I was involved to the point where, they made me promise that I wouldn't reveal my involvement with the show, especially behind the scenes, because people like Greg Kading and all of them said that they wouldn't do the show if I was involved with it in any way. Well, the truth of the matter was I was. I've got the contracts to prove it. I've got the meeting times and everything to prove it, the emails to prove it, that I was. And then when I made some flap about it on Facebook, I think I put something out there that I was involved with the show in some way or another on Facebook. And then Sherita got really mad. She called up screaming and yelling about the fact that I was involved with the show. And they called me up. You got to take that down, RJ. You got to take that down. Sherita's all mad about it. And I was like, well, I don't give a fuck. She can be mad all day. I don't care. But I said, all right, fine. I want the show to be successful. I want you to have every opportunity to interview everybody that you can and have goodwill and have the best opportunity for a good show that you could have. And that was the will that I passed on. But the truth of the matter is the show's been through. They changed showrunners 3 times on the show. They've had people in and out. They've interviewed and re-interviewed people several times. They added stuff in the 11th hour to change the narrative. And, this next show that they're putting out, they're going to be talking about some documents that they got from the LAPD that were never supposed to have been seen by the public. Well, first off, you got to understand where those documents came from. Vince, who is the showrunner for the show, called me, and I have my cell phone records to prove it. Vince from the TV show, A&E show, he's the showrunner. He called me up one day, and he was all excited because he wanted to know if I had any contacts in the LAPD that could help him verify the credibility of this letter that the LAPD got, or this document the LAPD had that's supposed to be from the LAPD. And again, he didn't know if it was or wasn't. He said he got it from an LAPD source, but who knows where he really got it from at the end of the day. Probably got it from Tim Brennan. But at the end of the day, he asked me if I knew anybody, and then he told me the circumstances of it. And I asked him if Greg Kading knew about the letter, and he told me Greg Kading said that he had never seen any kind of documents or any of that from the show. And that was the conversation that we had. I've been neck deep in all this. So Rolex, welcome to the show. But yeah, that's how I would know. I would know how all of this was put together because I've seen what it was. I was given a clip from episode 5 because I had to supply the Frank Alexander and the Michael Moore stuff. I want to know how it was going to be used. So they gave me that and told me what they needed for the show. How much more involved do you think I could be than that to not know what's happening? So that's that, guys.
Well, he's so involved that we do have an alternate take of Reggie's interview from both the Fox series and A&E series that I'd like to run for you. Is that okay with you, RJ?
Yeah, you want to run it now? That's fine, sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and run that. Just
Come on, let's
oh, that was
Are
a
you
good
running?
clip. Oh, that was great. Whew. Oh, it's hot under those
Whew.
lights.
Yeah, I'm sweating, man. Can you see? Oh.
Reggie claimed so hard that interview was just going to show the best side of him, and all he did was sweat like a pig the whole time.
Oh, just sweating, man. The pressure's too much. It's too hot in there. You gotta realize that motherfucker's sitting in his own house. He's got a couple lights. He's sitting in his own house, and he's sweating in his own house. I mean, really? You turn up your air conditioning. Well, good grief. You know? What can I tell you? What can I tell you? You know? Do I think Reggie's sick? Let me tell you this. Reggie is probably sick because his attorney said he's sick. And I can't imagine why an attorney would lie to the court and tell the court that he's sick and he not be sick. And I can't imagine that Reggie Wright Sr.'s attorney would say to the court that he's sick and may have throat cancer if he really wasn't sick and may have had throat cancer. And of course, that is of interest to a lot of other people because, see, you got 18 other attorneys. Okay? 18 other attorneys involved. Well, I would say 18 attorneys. 18 of the co-defendants. A couple of them have the same attorney. But you've got a dozen attorneys or more over there that wish for their clients that they could be walking free and not in jail, and wishing for their clients that maybe their clients might cut a deal or that their client may have their arraignment postponed. Some of these guys were arraigned back in July of last year. Okay? Can't understand why Reggie's was pushed off until like January for his arraignment. Okay? And now that it's coming out that he said those things in court, in the court filings that his dad and him put out there, said that he was sick, and then a video comes out, then they see a video of Reggie saying, "Oh, I'm okay." Well, that's going to cause them a little consternation because I'm sure that their client could probably claim to be sick, and maybe they'd get that same leniency from the court. You know, all they got to do is say they're sick, right? Clearly, because if you're that sick and nothing's wrong with you, but you say you have throat cancer, get out of ankle bracelet free card, right? So
It would appear
we'll see.
so. I think
Yeah.
I think it's real funny that all of a sudden they asked Reggie Wright Jr. about guns in Vegas, and he lets them know he had his. No guns in Vegas,
yeah.
guys, but I got mine.
Yeah, we could get arrested. If you took your gun to Vegas, you could get arrested. Did you have your gun? Yeah. No, yeah. And I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Do you have your next
That was-
Reggie?
That was Reggie's thing. We go, that's all I'm gonna say about that. You know, it's like I don't know. I wish I could have put a thought bubble above his head and said, "Please go away, please go away, please go away." I'm not talking to you no more. That's all I gotta say about that. You know, it was just. I mean, it was. I don't know. Look, I don't know what they left on the editing room floor. I just know that they made him. But I do find it interesting, though, that they didn't, Jesse, say anything about his pending indictments like the Fox show did. Even though, you know, they came out a lot later, and they delivered episode 5 not even a week ago to the network. So, or maybe 2 weeks ago. But certainly since July, and certainly since these indictments. And, you know, it asks the question, why wouldn't they mention that on the show? Certainly that would be damaging. That would certainly maybe throw a few rocks at the credibility wagon. And, you know, the answer to that question is that no, because if they put out that Reggie Wright's being indicted and they put it in the A&E show that he's being indicted, that could make Reggie look guilty. And if Reggie actually looked guilty, then that's kind of hard to take away and say that the Tupac assassination death row takeover theory is flawed and that Reggie's actually a pretty stand-up guy. I mean, they made him look suspicious, but they just said, Reggie Wright shut us down. Well, okay. Well, doesn't that seem a little odd to you? You know, that he wouldn't proclaim his innocence. But that was certainly something that caught my eye right away, is that A&E didn't bother to mention any of that because, again, all they're doing is promoting an agenda.
I'd like to show people what caught my eye. couldn't help myself. J.M. Kazi said, when did Suge find out that Reggie tried to kill him? Oh.
Um, when did Suge find out that Reggie tried to kill him? I think in some way or another he's known for a long time, but I can tell you that it couldn't have been. I mean, that's a great question, by the way. I would give that the question of the day, actually, because I'm taking it seriously. I think if you looked at it from a timeline perspective, I know that Suge gave Reggie a $6 million building to collect the rent from and to own. He signed his interest over to Reggie in 2002. Reggie sold the building in 2004. So they were still, as of 2002, so what's that, 6 years into it? They were still on good terms. So I know that that's not the case. That Suge probably didn't know. If he found something out between 2002 2004, I don't know. But I know that the building was sold in 2004. And then he went through the death row bankruptcy examination, and Reggie said he didn't have any money, and Reggie told the bankruptcy court he didn't have any real estate, when we all know what he did was he transferred the property. Right before that, he transferred his $1.6 million house in Corona into the name of his fiance, or not, wasn't fiance, he was just girlfriend at the time, who was a paralegal. You know, how they she could ever get a mortgage for $1.6 million on a paralegal salary is beyond me. Okay, but those are back in the days when they had what they call liar loans, where you could stated income loan. You could just say how much you made, and they just believed it. But you know, Reggie telling the bankruptcy court, and then the funny thing about the bankruptcy court, it was cracking me up because they go, the likelihood to an empty judgment is possible, which means they go get a judgment against Reggie Wright, but they'd never be able to collect it in a million years. Well, Reggie Wright's got judgments against him. I think even his own gardener sued him and got a judgment against him. So, you know, and then being evicted, you know, I mean, it's got to be pretty freaking bad when your own gardener sues you and gets a judgment against you. You know, Jose down the street with a lawnmower, you know, got his little wagon and you're pushing the lawnmower around, you know, want to charge you $25 for that lawn care, and you can't pay the lawn man. I mean, really? I know when I looked at the property records, I mean, this dude, I mean, he was in notice in default probably like 8 times on his house, where they were threatening to foreclose on his house like 8 different times. I mean, I don't think the guy could afford to pay attention at this point. But, you know, and then, of course, he wants to talk about me. Okay, so let's talk about me, RJ Bond being judgment proof. Well, you know, one of the big reasons you're judgment proof is when you already have judgments against you and they couldn't collect their judgments. So, you know, let's stop throwing those kind of rocks, dude, and let's just stick to the facts. The fact is that they asked you direct questions about what your involvement was, and you dodged every single one of them. So let's just leave it at that. What up, Joseph Bailey?
And I think if Reggie needs to do anything right now, he needs to start stocking up on some commissary, because the only way he's going to survive in federal prison is buying cats off with honey buns and ramen noodles. And trust me, you're talking to a guy who knows, because they don't like rats there. So you're going to be paying for a lot of protection, Reggie. So you want to make comments on my video about distribution? Let's talk distribution, my friend.
Yeah, Suge does go to trial. Gunsmoke, Suge goes to trial in January, if I'm not mistaken. Henry Johnson. Henry Johnson says, why do you think Daz has so much animosity towards Suge, but Corrupt shows him love? Well, because Daz wrote a lot of music for Death Row Records. He didn't get paid. That's why, you know, and they kept jerking him around and didn't want to pay the guy for work that he did. That's why. That's fine. I'd be pissed too.
And there's another element that people don't talk about is Suge Knight threatened Daz's mother to Daz's face. Said he'd send someone to her house. And I've got information on that. I'll put it up on. Daz says he's coming on, so I'm going to do an interview with Daz and we'll talk about that. But Suge made a lot of threats to Daz.
Yep. So, okay, so let's see here. Nicholas Golden, they've been to Vegas before, they've been to clubs before, they never didn't carry the guns previously, or we'd have heard about that. That's true. And the fact that Gaddafi flipped out. If you go back to Suge's interview with the Vegas police 3 or 4 days after the shooting happened, he was very angry about the fact that Frank didn't have his gun. And he was surprised that Frank didn't have his gun. In fact, Frank always used to tell the story that when Frank went to Suge's house the day that Tupac died, he got out of the car. Reggie met him in his car, He goes in there. Now he goes in front of Suge, goes to sit down, and Suge looks right at him and says, "I bet you got your gun now, don't you?" Okay. So it was clear that Suge was very angry about the fact that they didn't have guns. And Michael Moore says that, the artists got together and the artists were told they were not allowed to carry weapons. So again, they go back into that big conversation with Edie I Don't Mean. And at the end of the day, he did come straight about the fact that Frank told all of them that they were told not to carry their weapons. Okay. And, and of course, I can't validate a conversation that Gaddafi had, but they all knew that Frank didn't have, Frank wasn't to be held responsible for that. I've got pictures to prove it. They had a good relationship with Frank. Edie I Don't Mean got along fine with Frank. Frank Alexander was a friend, and there wasn't any ill will there. So I'm really glad they didn't take it in that direction. I'd have been more pissed off than I was when I watched the show.
To answer Franco the God, he asked Jmix RJ, if Reggie tried to kill Suge and Suge is a G, why didn't he get Reggie back? My answer to that question would be, I think that Reggie was involved in an attempt to take out Suge Knight. Now let's say that attempt fails. Reggie's only recourse at that point, he has two options. He could either get lost, beat it, and bring a lot of attention to himself, or he can tell Suge, hey, we're going to find out who did this, and we're going to take care of this for you. So I think that's my reasoning on why Suge wouldn't try to kill Reggie. Do you have any comments on that, RJ?
Yeah, I do. But first off, just because said, Welcome to the Show said that the A&E special was filmed last year before the Fox special. Reggie wasn't indicted yet. Well, actually, the truth of the matter is that is a true statement, but they just shot the interview where Ben Crump was talking to Michael Carlin on the phone. They shot that last week. That was new. They just shot that, and they were up until this past couple days still shooting interviews. They were still reshooting interviews with people. There was plenty of time for Ben Crump to get in front of a camera and say, Reggie Wright Jr. is in on an indictment. Okay, he didn't say anything about it. It wasn't even part of the conversation. So yes, the A&E special, the interview with Reggie was filmed last year, but let's not get it twisted. They've been shooting the show all the way up until like yesterday or the day before. So it has been an ongoing thing. It's entirely impossible to put it out there. What was your question about Reggie?
Well, I mean, to add on top of that, even Fox put a disclaimer, a title screen up that talked about the indictment. I mean, they could have done that. The question was asked if Suge found out about Reggie, or Reggie tried to have Suge killed, why didn't Suge retaliate against Reggie? That was the question.
Well, okay, so yeah, I do have some thoughts about that. Okay. Even in the best of friends relationship, you're friends with people. There are times that you go through love-hate with your best of friends. It doesn't matter. Times when you like them, times when you don't. I truly believe that there had to have been, in terms of, of course, everybody was fixated on who the shooter was, not who gave the orders or who it was. Because, again, if you make this lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, Orlando Anderson theory about this crazy gun guy that you just beat up and he came back and he shot you, nobody had to give the order, nobody else had to know. It's pretty well tied up with a bow. The question really becomes, Tim Brennan's zeal in putting that out there so soon after the shootings happened. His whole Orlando Anderson did it. And the lies about the chain snatch and the lies about the Lakewood Mall and trying to send Frank Alexander and Edie I Don't Mean back to Las Vegas and having them out there to lie about the chain snatch to the Vegas police and putting them out front like that. These guys were working very, very, very hard and asking a lot of people to take a lot of chances, perjury and everything else, to make up a lie and tell the Vegas police lies. Okay? You don't do that if it's just a story that you can just get away with. But it wasn't for the police. They were trying to put it over on Suge. They were trying to sell this whole theory so that if everybody bought it, maybe Suge Knight would buy it too. And again, because Reggie and Suge had a very, very close relationship, clearly through 2002, because you don't just give a $6 million buildings title to anybody. Okay, even a good friend. I don't know too many friends I know. Maybe you, Jesse, but other than that, I don't know too many people I would give a $6 million building to and just say, "Here's the title. Hold on to it till later."
And that's in
Okay,
Beverly Hills, mind
I
you.
mean
This
that's
is some of
crazy,
the richest real estate on the planet.
right? And he's so into that I really think that Suge really bought the whole Orlando Anderson story because there were so many people around him selling it. And of course, Reggie's going to sell it. Why wouldn't Reggie want to sell that theory? It's in Reggie's best interest to sell that theory, regardless of whether or not he himself is guilty or innocent. It's always easier on somebody that might be peripherally involved to have somebody else blamed for it, because if it's an act of a random gunman, then you, as the head of security for a death row records, who completely fucked up on your job and didn't have guns and didn't have proper protection for your artists. Let's just say those words, worst security ever, worst head of security ever. In terms of that, I mean, you've got these guys running around unprotected, and if you can make it out to it's this crazy dude, if you make it out to where it's this completely random act and nobody could have prepared for it, and it came out of the blue and it blindsided everybody, then you're off the hook in terms of what you could have prepared for, because you only can do so much. And that's kind of the excuse he's been given for 20 years. I can only do so much. I could only do so much. Well, sure, as long as you've got that. But if there was any idea at all that it was planned or anything else, then you don't have an excuse. So I think that Suge was buying that for a long time. I think it wasn't until they had their falling out. I think it was over Tammy Hawkins. I think it was over that. I couldn't be sure about that. But rumor has it that's what it was. But at the end of the day, when Suge and Reggie had their falling out, I'm sure it probably became pretty clear. I mean, when you have friends, I mean, you don't want to admit the truth sometimes about your friends, okay? You don't want to admit the truth. You don't want to admit what they are, okay? So, that I think you can deny yourself. You can, you could be in denial about things. I mean, Suge Knight's not above anything else. I mean, he's not above being in denial on things, wanting to do something, or think something to somebody that wasn't true. So I think that's what this is all about at the end. I think that he believed it for a long time just because they were selling it so hard, and there really hasn't been a whole lot of other alternatives either.
I need to take a small break for our sponsor, and our sponsor is Reggie Wright Cigarettes. Pack them tight because they're going to be loose for the next 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, and that reminds me, we have that key piece of evidence coming up here in a little bit. So tell your friends, let's see here. What are your thoughts on Jewel pulling a gun out on Suge after he pulled a gun out on her for leaving Death Row Records? Well, here's what I think. I think that Suge Knight was a violent dude. I think Suge Knight's a violent dude. I think that Suge Knight has been involved in a lot of acts of violence and has been a violent guy. I'm not the president of Suge Knight's fan club. Okay, you want president of Suge Knight's fan club, call Alex or call Michael or somebody else. But even Michael and I agree that Suge Knight isn't a nice guy. Okay, I ain't sending no damn Christmas card in the mail this year. Okay, I haven't put any money on his commissary. He's a violent guy. So I think that everything they say about him is true. And in fact, even the violence could have been a trigger. Everybody says that Suge Knight was getting too much publicity. And by the way, did you notice that even Sherita said that Suge was getting too much publicity and he was getting out in front of it too much and it was causing trouble at the record label? Yeah, you're right. We know. But she's saying all that stuff and talking about how he was causing that. The violence that he was bringing around it too may have left a bad taste in people's mouths, like a Jimmy Iovine or a David Kenner or anybody else who was actually trying to run a business that, for good or bad or ugly, no matter what kind of business it was that they run, they were trying to run a business and make money. You get violence, you bring police. Okay, the Can-Am Studios and Ken Knox Logs say that. You bring violence to a situation, you bring cops. And you bring heat, and you bring the Justice Department, and you bring investigations down. So maybe they were also tired of the violence. But Suge Knight was a violent dude. Let's just put it out like that.
And to
You're right,
piggyback on
Joseph.
that, I'm sorry, to piggyback on that, you guys got to keep in mind, Suge was arrested for holding a gun to a woman's head in a domestic dispute with ecstasy on him. RJ, would you care to tell people about the 23rd floor of the building?
Oh yeah. Okay, good lord. Okay, yeah. The violence was so bad. There was actually in Universal Studios. There is a tower called the Universal Tower. It's a big black tower, and they have labels there. People that have labels, like all the different record labels, they have offices in this one floor. It's the 23rd floor, and Suge Knight was up there because several different companies that had record labels there interacted with Suge over the last years. The violence got so bad that on that 23rd floor, which they called the ghetto, on that 23rd floor of the Universal Tower, Suge Knight was told by security he couldn't go up to that 23rd floor because so many people were afraid of him up there that they wouldn't even allow him up on the floor. So yeah, Suge couldn't go on the 23rd floor of the Universal Tower in Universal City because he was so violent, and that was what it was.
Rumor has it there was a picture of Suge up there and it said, "Do not let this man in."
There was actually that came from our old distributor, Icon Entertainment. That's very, very true. So Harry O told Suge to stay in the background. Yeah, absolutely. Harry O did tell Suge to stay in the background, but he wouldn't. That's very true. Let's see here.
Bandstore has a couple good questions he keeps asking.
Throw 'em.
Hi, RJ and Jmix. Welcome to the show, Bandstore. Frank said the shooter shot like a cop, and Kevin Gaines was obviously in Las Vegas and had a grudge against Suge. What makes you entertain the? Is that what makes you entertain the idea of him being a shooter?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't believe Kevin Gaines was a shooter. Okay, I wouldn't be out there talking about the patents and talking about Little Half Dead and the confession letter if I believed that Kevin Gaines was the shooter. Okay, the other thing is that I heard Michael talking about that it was a military style execution, military style setup. Dude, let me tell you, who's military? Okay, the French. I mean, who's military? I mean, the way they missed. They barely hit Tupac. They killed him because of a ricochet. They barely hit him. They didn't hit Suge at all. He got some flying glass, and they were no more than 6 feet away from either of those guys. Okay, what kind of military operation is that? Who shot like a cop? Please. Okay, it was amateur hour all the way because they started shooting from the back of the car moving forward. And with all respect to my buddy Randy Sullivan, who I really, really like, he said that they were driving away, and that, maybe he thought that, but the bullet holes in the trajectory of the bullets looked like it was coming into the car as they were moving forward and as they passed the car by. How can you be 5 feet away from somebody and miss them? How does that happen? Okay, military operation, please. And if it's such a military operation, how come? I mean, the story's changed now that the girls were in front of the Cadillac. But how was that allowed to happen? If that happened, how could that be a military operation? So again, opinions vary. Michael believes it was a military-grade operation. Don't know what branch of the military he ever served in to give that opinion. I was in the Navy. Can we figure out what part of it was military? I mean, did they have spotters? Maybe they did. The confession letter says that there were 6 barricades set up. There were 6 different checkpoints where somebody could get killed. So, but no, do I believe Kevin Gaines is a shooter? I don't believe Kevin Gaines is a shooter. I believe that the patent letter is probably the best truthful statement of things that happened, because when you want people to, and this is the thing that goes back and forth, because on one hand, Michael said it was a military operation, and I think it's in the editing. I'm not saying anything bad about Michael, because I think it was in the editing of the show. But at the end of the day, you got to land on one side or the other, because either it was a military operation and there was precision and they were hit and some random factor caused it to go FUBAR. But if it wasn't, it was amateur hour. And if you believe the patents did it, it was amateur hour. You could have all the spotters in the world, but you ask the guys who did it. Now, Michael was the first one to say that was the experience modification that they did for the Biggie hit, that they said, okay, we can't trust amateurs to do this. We can't trust gang guys to do the hit. We have to trust cops to make sure that the target is hit. And that was and Michael coined the term, I didn't make it up, experience modification, that the hit was going to happen with Biggie, and they were going to use cops for the hit and paid assassins, people that knew what they were doing, hitmen, to make it happen, to guarantee that this time it wouldn't suffer the same consequences of a miss like they did the first time around. So again, I don't know what military we're talking about for military operation, but that's that.
And to follow up with Band Store, look, I think it's very, very suspicious that Kevin Gaines was in Vegas when he was supposed to be assigned to a desk job in Los Angeles. I think it's very suspicious that he was there in Vegas, and he very well could play a role in this thing. Unfortunately, we're never going to know because he was shot dead in traffic by another cop who actually admitted later that he had seen Kevin Gaines before. He knew that Kevin Gaines of him.
Right. Well, and the other thing, somebody said here, and this was, I think it's part of the A&E show, but somebody asked, put it out there. I didn't catch it before it flew by. Why would Reggie take a shot at Suge Knight in Vegas during that time? And why, if he had access to him 24/7, why would he try to do it then? It's all about jurisdiction. Okay. The Compton Police Department was already on people's radars. From the LAPD to the LA Sheriff's Department, there was already that. We had Steve Strong get on. He was a detective in the gang units for LAPD, and so they didn't exchange information with Compton cops because they were already labeled as being corrupt. Then questionable in character. When you have somebody that's killed in another state, it becomes a jurisdictional nightmare because you live in California. It's very hard to reach across state lines and go grab people, and that's what Brent Becker told us when we interviewed Vegas cops. And by the way, how many TV shows, Jesse, have you seen other than the A&E show where they interviewed the one Vegas cop, Wayne Peterson, that they interviewed him? How many other shows have you seen where they've interviewed anybody that ever worked a case? Nobody. A&E show was the first Vegas policeman that they could get on there other than Chris Carroll, the bike cop. But in terms of the investigation, we interviewed Brent Becker twice and got his comments on that. And he said that the biggest problem was it's a free country. People come and go where they want to. And the minute they cross state lines, Vegas doesn't have jurisdiction. Okay. Now, who would know that, Jesse? Who might understand criminal prosecution and jurisdictional boundaries and where the best place you might try to kill somebody at? Who would that be?
A police officer? A son of a police officer? A person that come from a long lineage of police officers?
No. Think about it. Who would know criminal prosecution and criminal defense well enough to know what you can do and what's the most difficult kind of murder trial to undertake or murder investigation? Now, who might have those kind of years experience, maybe working with criminal mob enterprises, working with criminal defense, I wonder who might know
who is David
that.
Kenner for 100, RJ?
You're right, Alex. I'll take David Kenner for 400, and I'll double down on that 400 for Final Jeopardy and tell you that David Kenner was fired 2 days before, the day before Sherita. Depends on who you ask. Okay. All right. So, hey, as far as I'm concerned, resources aren't just about cops. Okay. Resources are about who you know in the legal community and who you can consult with to say, if I'm going to go do something, okay, if you want to know how you're going to ski on a particular slope that you've never skied before, you might want to talk to someone who's actually skied on the slope and say, how should I ski on this slope? What kind of ski should I bring? What should I carry with me? If you've never been to a place, you've never been camping somewhere, maybe there's something to do about the place you need to find out. That's what you ask people about those things. And so I could say, who had the criminal defense, who knew every defense you could throw up for a criminal, and who might be able to tell them where the best location to do it would be? Could it be Satan? No, it wasn't. It was probably David Kenner. All right. So let's see here. All the people that died from death row after were not killed by crops. Well, Asia... No, they weren't killed by crops. That you're thinking of that movie with Donnie Wahlberg where the trees killed everybody. No, cops. I know you mean cops when you say that. Yes, all the people that died from death row after were not killed by cops. They were killed by gang guys. And who ran the gangs in Compton? Who were the police gang cops in Compton?
Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd.
And Reggie Wright Sr. Reggie Wright Sr. was in charge of the gangs there. Okay. So, again, you know, this all kinds of goes back to the same people again. Let's see here.
I had Mohammed Shakur said, Jesse and RJ, there's an Orlando Anderson confession tape here on YouTube, and what are your thoughts about that? As much as I can't stand to invoke the name of Mike Dorsey. Mike Dorsey had that video originally pulled down because it wasn't Orlando Anderson. That's a fake tape. And that would fall along the lines of bullshit. And you can always go to Truth Entertainment YouTube and you can ask the people at Truth Entertainment why they pulled that video down. It was a fake, it was a forgery, and it was not Orlando Anderson.
Right. So let's see here. It says the Feeney sued and won rights to Tupac's material. Is the aspect of the death row takeover that involves Tupac ultimately a failure? You know, yeah, because the problem was you had a real situation happening. I mean, because it became a real shit show. Something that could have been very clean, something that could have been made a transition to be very clean transition, became very messy because Suge Knight lived. Now you've got Suge Knight, he's embroiled. They got to figure out a way to kind of sideline Suge Knight. So this whole thing about the probation violation, and he's the only one that suffered any ill consequence from it, other than Tupac, who died. But he's the only one who really suffered any ill consequence from that beating. Nobody was charged with anything. And at the end of the day, I lost my train of thought. Damn it. What was the question? God, I hate when I do that.
Crooked Cops for 2000.
Crooked Cops for 2000. Well, no, I forget what the hell I was going to say. Ask me the question again. We'll get back on it again. James McClain, did Reggie Wright Jr. had something to do with the shooting? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Welcome to the show, James. Maybe you're new to the show. I have some recommended reading. There's a movie called Tupac Assassination, Battle for Compton you should see. It's good, and I think it's free on the internet right now, which, by the way, F you to everybody who says that because we're showing Battle for Compton for free on the internet means that we don't have a distributor. We got a distributor. Don't even worry about that.
I don't know. Look, and I'm being dead serious here. I think people should be appreciative that you actually allowed 50,000 people to view it so far, absolutely free of charge.
Yeah, $10 a pop. That's a $500,000 give right there.
It is, okay. And I want to say this. Look, I know we beat up on A&E and we've beat up on the Fox special, but we're passionate about this, and I want you guys to know this is being on TV is of very little importance. We're here because we want to solve the murder of Tupac Shakur. We want to see justice in this case. So it's, you know, a lot of allegations have been thrown to us about money, and it's not about money. It's not about fame.
Right. Okay, so check this out. I got back on subject again. We're talking about Afeni winning the rights to Tupac's suit and winning the rights to Tupac's material. You know, the truth of the matter is that she had to resue Death Row 4 times because Death Row actually never ended up giving her the masters and giving her the money that she was owed. She had to keep going back after them time and time again, and even intervene in the bankruptcy in Death Row in 2006 through 2008. She had to get in the middle of that because they still hadn't given her the money that they said. But again, like I said, when Suge Knight got shot, it was a real show because they had to sideline him, get him off there, and get him on that charge. You know, people don't understand. David Kenner was out of the Death Row game by September of 1997. Actually, it may have been March of 1997. I take it back. Right around the time that Biggie got killed. So it was actually August of 97. That's when it was. August of 97, Kenner gave Suge Knight half of his interest in the building on Wilshire Boulevard. So David Kenner is like, fuck this, you can have it. $3 million, he owned half of it, and that's when Suge Knight owned the whole building on Wilshire Boulevard, $6 million building. But Kenner gave all that up. Kenner checked out. He cashed out right around August, September of 1997. I think it was about the time when Suge went to jail, because he went to jail in April or May of 97, and then Kenner checked out after that. So I do think that it caused an enormous problem Because if Tupac had been killed, Suge had been killed, and they were successful in setting up the whole Orlando Anderson thing, there wouldn't have been a whole big problem. The transition would have been pretty smooth. But they didn't, and the one thing they didn't count on, they didn't know, is that Tupac had fired David Kenner. Once that information got out, that changed the nature of things pretty completely. So, yeah, Bandstore, I do believe that it was ultimately a frustrated effort. Because they weren't able to do things in order. Plans just fell apart.
Yeah, and people that are talking about financials, and A&E show brought up that Tupac's royalties were due to him the month after he passed away. A lot of people, because RJ had brought it up earlier with the Ken Knox report, aren't even aware of the financial situation that Death Row was in. They were being, at the time of Tupac's shooting, they were in the process of being evicted from Can-Am Studios. So there is definitely a history there, or some evidence there, of some financial ruin happening at Death Row at the time of Tupac's death.
Well, Greatest King says Kevin Hackey apologized to Reggie and then went with the Orlando theory. Says who? Okay, says who? Again, and Kevin may have his own opinion. Kevin wasn't there. He may have his own opinion about who he thinks did it. I mean, that's okay. But Kevin Hackey never apologized to Reggie, as far as I know, and I talk to Kevin Hackey all the time. There was nothing to apologize for. They may have, talked about that whole Reggie Wright lie detector challenge thing. They may have talked about that. Shine Masoki. No, that's not true. Kevin Hackey did not die. Kevin Hackey is alive and well. Thank you very much. But they did not kill Kevin Hackey. He's not dead. Why did Hackey change his mind? Kevin Hackey never changed his mind. He just wouldn't elaborate on anything anymore in court. He did 9 interviews with the LAPD, and he told them over and over and over and over again, I will testify for you if you help me on these bogus gun charges that you have hanging over my head to keep me away from everything and to make me look like I'm a felon and I'm this, that, and the other. If you help me with this, I will be happy to testify that. They kept saying they were going to, but we need to interview one more time. They kept going and going and going. Finally, when last time they did was right about the time of the civil trial, and Kevin said, I'm just not doing this. I'm too afraid of Death Row Records. I don't like it. And so he never, again, there was nothing to apologize for. And he didn't recant. He said he was having memory problems and he couldn't remember things. And he said all that up on the stand, but he also said, I'm doing this because I'm afraid of Death Row Records. Period. I'm afraid of what will happen to me. And he had a family, and he had a lot of things to think about.
What was the point of him testifying anyway? Because just like RJ said, he stood up there on the stand. He said, I was afraid of Death Row Records. Greg Kading, even in Murder Rap, uses that testimony but omits that part of the testimony. So Kevin Hackey testifying is not really going to do any good either way when you have a whole department and a whole entity worth of people that want to bury the truth anyway. All that Kevin stands to gain from testifying and helping these people is risk to his life. So I personally, I don't know Kevin, but I do not blame Kevin Hackey for not wanting to talk about it anymore. What is there to gain for him?
Right. And by the way, Yeezy, Kevin Hackey got sentenced to the FBI. He's MIA. He is not MIA. I know exactly where he is. And I talk with him pretty frequently, in fact, especially when Reggie started saying that they said he was sick. I talked to Kevin about that too, about all that. So let's see here. Guys, the A&E episode 4 was going well until Crump says it just can't be Kenner. Yeezy, I totally agree with you on that. I thought that was there were 2 things that just completely threw me like a what the fuck moment. The first one was when they had 6 or 7 people, including Harry O, saying what a scumbag Kenner was. And then all of a sudden, Crump says, well, we can eliminate him. It can't be Kenner. That mystified me. That just baffled me completely. I mean, and the second thing is that when Crump said that he was confused because on the one hand, David Kenner was supposed to be the mastermind of the operation to have Suge and Tupac taken out, but on the other hand, Orlando Anderson was paid to testify on behalf of Suge Knight. And so those two somehow conflict with each other. And I'm like, where have you been? What planet are you living on? Because I'm like, huh? I mean, it was just clearly such a disjointed thing. It made him look like an idiot because it was completely disjointed. But you got to also remember, Ben Crump's just reading off cue cards. Ben Crump didn't go out there and pound the pavement. He wasn't turning over documents. He may have looked at some. But he's largely been given a cue card sitting on a chair, and he's reading a narrative. He is narrating a show. Okay? And again, so they put him out there when he says that, hey, Crump says it can't be Kenner. Well, of course it can't be Kenner, because if it was Kenner, then it couldn't be the Orlando Anderson theory, could it? And then all of a sudden, Afro woman with the orange afro and Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd that wrote that book, then their theory is in trouble. They may not sell as many books that way if suddenly it's David Kenner.
And spoiler alert, they're going to pull out a BS document and try to pin it on Orlando. Sorry. Hey all, it's Jmix here, and I want to thank everybody that took the time to watch the video. If you liked it, go ahead and throw it a like, maybe even a comment down below. And if you really like my content, check out my Patreon. The link is down below. For $1 a month, you get all the live streams, unedited as soon as they happen, plus interviews in advance and other bonus content. The link is in the description. If not, you guys could always watch one of the videos to the side of me.